The academy was larger than any city she had seen. Its towers of shining crystal rose above the clouds, halls stretched like rivers of light, and ships from 100 species floated around it like insects circling a sun. For many students, it was a dream to be here, but for her it felt like stepping into the jaws of a predator. She was human, the only one in her class. Her name was whispered but not respected. To the aliens, she looked fragile, too small, too weak. Her dark hair tied back with a simple string, her clothes plain and her bag worn from use. While others wore robes of silk and armor of glowing metals, she looked like a mistake. When she entered the hall for the first lesson, hundreds of alien eyes turned toward her. Long arms, scaled hides, glowing eyes, wings, tentacles, they all stared. Then came the laughter. It was not cruel in a personal way. It was cruel in the way of a crowd that thought her entire kind was worthless. "Human," one tall insectoid muttered, his voice like broken glass. "I thought they were extinct," another replied. "Not extinct, just forgotten. Weak creatures, the galaxy moved on without them." She walked slowly, her shoes tapping against the shining floor. She kept her face calm, though her heart beat fast. She sat down at the back of the hall, but the whispers followed her. They did not stop. The teacher, an old being with silver horns curling above his head, cleared his throat but did nothing to silence the class. In his eyes, there was no reason to protect her. To him, humans were harmless, and perhaps letting others laugh at her would teach her place. Her hands rested on the desk, and that was when it happened. The faint glow hidden beneath her skin, lines shaped like fire and circles of unknown language, the tattoo that had always been there since birth. For a moment, it flickered, soft light escaping through her fingers. She quickly closed her hand, hoping no one had noticed, but one alien did. A reptilian student with sharp scales leaned closer, his yellow eyes narrowing. "What is that on your hand?" he hissed, but she shook her head, whispering, "Nothing." The lesson began, history of empires, wars of long ago. The teacher spoke of glorious battles, of fleets that burned across the stars. He spoke of the fall of primitive races, of how the galaxy grew stronger by removing weakness. When he reached the human chapter, his voice almost laughed. Humans were scattered tribes, brave but foolish. They stood against greater powers and were crushed. Their worlds burned, their fleets erased. Today, they are nothing but a shadow. The class laughed again, the sound echoing in the hall. She felt her jaw tighten. Her tattoo pulsed under her skin, as if it hated the words more than she did. She clenched her fist, her body trembling. One of the larger aliens, a brute with 4 arms, turned around and pointed at her. "See, the shadow sits among us. Maybe we should teach her the truth of history." Others laughed louder. They banged their tables, mocking. She stayed silent, her eyes lowered, but inside her chest burned like fire. She remembered her father's words, spoken when she was still a child. "This mark is not decoration. It is not art. It is memory. One day you will understand. One day they will too." The alien brute did not stop. He got up from his seat, his heavy steps shaking the ground. He leaned over her desk, his breath foul, his eyes filled with arrogance. "Human, do you even know why you are here? You cannot fight. You cannot win. You are only here so the galaxy can laugh again." His clawed hand reached for her wrist, rough and sharp. He wanted to pull her up and shame her, but the moment his skin touched her tattoo, the light burst, not small this time, but bright enough to fill the hall. The air grew heavy. The sound of laughter died instantly. Every student froze, their bodies stiff, their minds struck with something they could not understand. It felt like the ground itself growled, like unseen eyes glared from the shadows, ancient, angry, and close. The brute stumbled back, his eyes wide with fear. He looked at his hands as if burned. What is that?" he whispered. But no one answered. The teacher, the students, all sat silent, staring at the human girl who now hid her glowing hand under the desk. Her face remained calm, though her chest rose and fell quickly. She could not let them see her fear. She could not let them know she herself did not fully understand what lived inside her skin. The glow faded. The hall returned to normal light, but the silence remained. Whispers did not return. Laughter did not dare. They only watched her now, their eyes mixed with confusion and unease. She looked down at her desk, but in her mind she heard her father's voice again. One day, the galaxy will remember, and when it does, silence will follow. The lesson continued, but no one truly listened. All thoughts were on the girl at the back of the hall, the human with the hand that glowed like fire. The silence from the first day did not end quickly. The next morning when she entered the hall, the aliens no longer laughed. Their eyes followed her in quiet curiosity. Their whispers were softer now, but whispers were still there. Some leaned close to one another, muttering that maybe it was a trick. Maybe she had hidden technology in her hand. Others said it was some primitive magic, a fake. But deep inside, none of them believed their own excuses. What they had felt was not a trick. It was fear, a fear older than their empires. She walked calmly, pretending not to hear them, her step steady, her expression quiet, but inside her chest was heavy. She remembered the glow. She remembered how the mark had burned when Etched, it frightened her as much as it frightened them. The teacher tried to continue lessons as normal, but even his voice carried hesitation. When he reached the human chapter again, he did not smile this time. His throat tightened, and he quickly changed the subject. No one laughed now. During combat training, the whispers grew stronger. The aliens formed into groups, each trying new weapons, new tactics. Their bodies moved fast and powerful. She stood at the edge watching, her hands folded, the tattoo faint beneath her skin. One tall alien with silver scales looked at her and sneered, "Human, are you too weak to join?" His voice was loud enough for all to hear. The others turned their heads, waiting. She raised her eyes, calm but sharp. "I will join when I am ready," she said softly, her words simple yet steady. The silver-scaled alien laughed, but it was nervous laughter. He wanted to test her, but his claws shook slightly. Another alien, a smaller one with sharp horns, whispered, "Do not touch her hand." His voice carried a warning. Others nodded without thinking. None wanted to feel that terror again. Late at night in her small room, she sat by the dim light, her hand resting on her knee. The tattoo pulsed like a heartbeat, faint lines shifting like fire under her skin. She whispered to herself, "What are you?" But the mark gave no answer, only heat and silence. She remembered her father's words more clearly now. He had said the mark was memory, not decoration, that it carried the past inside it, a past the galaxy had tried to bury. She wondered if the mark was awakening, if it had waited for this place, this academy, this audience. The next day, the academy grounds buzzed with rumor. The story of the glowing hand had spread beyond her class. Students from other wings came to see her, to stare, to whisper, "That is the human." Some pointed from far away. Sharis. Avoided her eyes completely. At midday, she entered the great library, the largest in the academy. Its shelves stretched to the sky, filled with records of every empire, every species. She hoped to find answers about the mark. She walked between towering shelves until she reached the restricted wing. A heavy gate blocked the way, guarded by tall machines. She stepped closer, and for a moment the machines flickered. Their sensors scanned her hand, though she had not raised it. The tattoo glowed faintly, and the machines shivered, then powered down for a second before returning to life. She froze, pulling her hand back. No alarm sounded, but she knew the mark had done something. From behind her, a voice whispered, "You should not be here." She turned. It was the silver-horned teacher, his eyes sharper than before, his voice low. "Humans are not allowed in this section." She bowed her head, apologizing, and left. But she felt his eyes linger on her hand, watching, calculating. By evening, whispers turned into challenges. A noble-born alien approached her in the dining hall, tall, with jeweled armor that glowed faintly, his followers behind him. "Human," he said loudly, "your hand frightened children, but I am no child. I challenge you. Prove you are more than shadow." The hall grew silent, every eye fixed on her. She looked up at him, calm but firm. "I do not wish to fight," she said, but he slammed his fist on the table. The sound echoed like thunder. "Then you admit weakness," he sneered. The crowd stirred, waiting. Her chest tightened. The mark burned again, hotter than before. She rose slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "If you want to see what this hand means, then you will," she whispered. The hall trembled, not from sound but from the sudden weight in the air, as if the mark itself was listening. The noble smirked, confident. He thought it would be easy to break a human in front of everyone. But those closest to her felt the change, the silence that came with her words. They stepped back without meaning to. their hearts uneasy. That night, in the training arena, the challenge was set. Students filled the seats. Teachers stood at the edge. The noble raised his jeweled weapon, glowing with power. She stood with empty hands, her plain clothes, her bare feet on the cold floor. Yet the mark glowed brighter now, lines of fire moving across her skin. The crowd leaned forward, the whispers hushed. Everyone wanted to see the truth. Was she shadow, or was she something far more dangerous? The noble charged, fast and strong, but the human girl did not move. Her hand rose slowly, the mark blazing like a star. The moment his weapon came near her, the air itself bent. A wave of fear rolled through the arena. Hearts skipped, breaths caught. The noble stumbled mid-strike, his eyes wide, his weapon shaking. She stepped forward, her voice calm. "You wished for proof, here it is." The mark roared with light, and the arena fell into silence. The arena was still echoing with silence when she left. The noble who had challenged her lay trembling, unable to rise. The others stared, but none dared speak. Her hand had burned like fire, and the air itself had seemed to kneel before her. That night, she could not sleep. She sat in her small room with only the dim light of the stars shining through the glass. The tattoo glowed softly on her hand, its lines shifting like rivers of flame. She whispered to herself, "What are you? Why are you inside me?" But no answer came, only heat pulsing like a second heart. Her mind drifted back to her father's last words before she left Earth. "This mark is not yours alone. It is memory. It is warning. The galaxy has forgotten, but the galaxy must remember." She had thought those words were only riddles, but now she felt the weight of them. The next day, she entered the great library again, her steps careful, her eyes scanning the endless shelves. She searched the open sections, but humans were only mentioned as weak, primitive, erased by stronger races. There was nothing about glowing marks, nothing about silence. Her eyes lifted toward the restricted wing. The gate stood there tall and guarded by machines. She took a step closer, her hand hidden in her sleeve. But again the mark pulsed, the machines shivered, their glowing eyes dimmed. And for a brief moment the lock lights blinked out. Her chest tightened. She pulled back quickly, afraid she would be caught. But one book fell from a high shelf near her feet. It was old, covered in dust. She picked it up and turned the pages. Inside were fragments of records erased from official memory. One line burned into her mind. The Silent Legion, warriors marked by fire, bearers of human wrath feared by all empires. Her fingers tightened on the page. The word Legion echoed in her mind. She whispered it softly, and the mark pulsed an answer. She almost dropped the book in shock. It was as if the tattoo itself recognized the name. From behind her, footsteps echoed. She quickly hid the book under her arm. A tall alien with silver scales stepped into the light. It was the one who had mocked her before, but now his eyes were not cruel. They were sharp with unease. "I saw what you did in the arena," he said quietly. "That was not technology. That was something older." She narrowed her eyes. "What do you know?" she asked, her voice low. The scaled alien hesitated, then whispered, "Only stories. Stories of humans who once made empires tremble. Stories banned by the Academy. They called them myths. But your hand proves they are not myths." He stepped back quickly, afraid of being overheard. "Be careful, human. If the leaders discover what you are, he will not let you live." Then he left, his tail dragging behind him, leaving her in heavy silence. That night the mark burned hotter than ever. It pulled her into dreams. She saw visions of old battles, human ships made of steel and flame tearing through alien fleets, warriors with glowing tattoos leading armies, voices screaming across the stars, "Never forget, never forgive." She woke with sweat on her skin, her hand glowing bright in the dark. The next morning, teachers summoned her. They claimed it was for progress review, but she knew it was something else. She walked into the chamber of council, tall chairs circling her, alien leaders of different species watching, their eyes cold, their voices sharp. "Human," one with long horns said, "you carry something forbidden. We have seen the glow. We have felt the weight. What are you hiding?" She bowed her head slightly. "It is only a mark," she answered softly. But the room trembled. The mark on her hand flared even though she tried to hide it. The leaders stiffened. One hissed, "This is no simple mark. This is a key." Another leader with skin like stone leaned forward. Long ago, humans carried marks like this. They commanded weapons that even gods feared. Those weapons were sealed, and the galaxy erased their memory. If you awaken them, war will return. She clenched her fist. The mark pulsed hotter. She could not control it. One of the statues at the edge of the chamber cracked with a sudden sound, stone splitting as if it had waited centuries for her presence. The leaders recoiled in shock. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. You call it forbidden, but this is not yours to forbid. It is mine. It is human. The chamber filled with whispers, sharp and fearful. The leaders looked at each other, some wanting to silence her forever, others too afraid to try. The truth was clear now. She was not Shadow. She was Spark, and the spark had begun to burn. As she left the chamber, every student in the corridors watched her pass, some in fear, some in awe, some whispering the words that had spread like fire. Silent Legion, Silent Legion. She kept her head low, but her heart pounded, for she knew now that her mark was not just memory, it was a signal, and the galaxy would soon remember. The council chamber's whispers did not fade. By the next day, the entire academy was alive with rumor. Some said the human girl carried a forbidden weapon. Others said she was a curse, but all agreed on one thing: she was dangerous. The noble who had challenged her before, the one in jeweled armor, could not accept his defeat. His pride burned hotter than his fear. He gathered his followers. Their voices rose in the dining hall. The human cheated. No weak race can stand against us. Her power is false, a trick. Their words spread like poison. Soon the challenge was official, announced before the academy, this time not in secret but in the great arena where all students and teachers would gather. The noble wanted her humiliation to be public. He wanted to prove that humans were nothing. When the message reached her, she sat in silence, her hand resting on the desk, the tattoo glowing faintly. She whispered to herself, "If I refuse, they will call me coward. If I accept, they will see what this mark truly is." Her chest felt heavy, but deep inside the mark pulsed as if urging her to fight. On the day of the challenge, the arena was filled. Thousands of students sat in the stands. Teachers and officials lined the walls. Banners of different species waved above. The noble entered first, his jeweled armor shining, a weapon of crystal in his hand. His followers shouted his name. Then she walked in, no armor, no weapon, only her plain clothes and the mark on her hand. The crowd jeered, some shouted insults, but none dared step close. The horn of the arena sounded. The duel began. The noble charged forward with a roar, his weapon glowing with destructive energy. The air cracked with its power. He swung with all his strength, aiming to cut her down in one blow, but she raised her hand. The tattoo blazed and the weapon stopped mid-swing, frozen as if the air itself had turned to stone. The noble's eyes widened, his arms trembled, the crowd gasped. She stepped forward slowly, her voice calm. "You wanted truth. Here it is." She touched the weapon with her glowing hand. The crystal shattered into dust. Silence spread across the arena. The noble screamed and swung with his fists, his jeweled armor glowing, but each strike missed. Her movements were guided by something older, faster. Her hand caught his arm. The glow spread across his armor, and with a single push he flew back, crashing to the ground. His jewels cracked, his pride broken. The crowd was silent. Thousands of alien eyes stared at her. They had come to see a weak human fall. Instead, they saw a warrior rise. The noble struggled to his feet, his face twisted with rage. He shouted, "She is cursed. She carries forbidden power. She must be destroyed." His voice echoed, but the fear in his eyes betrayed him. She stood tall, her hand glowing brighter. "You call it cursed because you fear it, but this is not curse. It is memory. It is truth." Her words rolled through the arena like thunder. The ground shook. The ancient statues that lined the arena cracked, stone eyes glowing for the first time in centuries. The mark on her hand pulsed in rhythm with them. The crowd panicked. Some fled the stands, others froze in terror. The teachers shouted, trying to restore order, but even they looked pale. One whispered to another, "The Silent Legion has returned." The noble fell to his knees, his voice breaking. "What are you?" he whispered. She stepped close, her shadow falling over him, her glowing hand raised. "I am human," she said simply. With those words, the arena fell into complete silence. No one moved, no one spoke. The weight of her presence pressed against every heart. The galaxy's forgotten fear had returned. When she left the arena, no one dared block her path. Students stepped aside, teachers lowered their eyes, even the noble's followers kept their distance. She walked out quietly, but the silence she left behind was louder than any victory shout. That night, alone in her room, she sat with the glow of the tattoo still burning. She whispered to herself, "It will not stay hidden. They will come for me now." The mark pulsed as if in agreement. She felt both dread and strength. The path ahead was no longer hers alone. It belonged to humanity's forgotten legacy. The duel in the arena did not end with silence alone. By the next morning, the entire academy was alive with restless voices. Every corridor carried whispers. Every classroom trembled with rumor. Some students said the human had awakened forbidden power. Others said she carried the blood of ancient warriors. None dared laugh now. Teachers tried to calm the chaos, but even they spoke in low voices, their eyes shifting whenever she walked past. For centuries they had taught that humans were weak, erased, forgotten. Now their own lessons felt like lies. In the dining hall, she sat at the far corner, eating quietly, yet the whole room bent around her, tables farther away than usual, students staring but never daring to step close. One alien muttered, "Do not touch her hand, it carries death," another whispered. "No, it carries history." The noble who had once mocked her did not return, his pride shattered, his followers scattered. But his defeat was not the end, it was the spark. Because now the academy leaders demanded answers. In secret chambers, the teachers and council gathered, their voices sharp and fearful. "She bears the mark of theirs, his silent legion," one said. "If this is true, then everything we buried will rise again," another growled. "It must be erased before it spreads." But an older teacher with silver horns shook his head. "It is too late. The mark has awakened, and the students have seen. They will tell the galaxy." And the students did tell. Messages left the academy. Whispers flew faster than ships, reaching other worlds, other stations. The humans are not weak. The humans are returning. Far away, in the chambers of distant empires, rulers received the rumors. Some laughed at first, calling it impossible. But when they remembered the old stories locked in forbidden records, their laughter died. One emperor whispered, "If the silent legion rises again, our fleets will fall." Back in the academy, her nights grew heavier. She dreamed of battles she had never fought, of ships with human banners tearing through alien skies, of warriors with glowing marks standing unbroken against empires. Every dream left her breathless, her hand burning. One night she woke to find her walls trembling, the tattoo glowing so bright it lit the room like fire. On her desk, the book she had stolen from the library opened itself, pages turning, the words glowing. She read them in fear and awe. The mark is a key, not for one, but for all. It awakens the memory of humanity. It awakens their weapons. It awakens their wrath. Her fingers shook. The truth was clear now. She was not chosen alone. She was the first, but not the last. The next day, the academy leaders confronted her, this time in front of all, their voices loud, their anger sharp. "You are forbidden," one shouted. "This mark is dangerous. It cannot be allowed." Another snarled, "You are not a student. You are a weapon." She stood quietly, her head lowered, but her hand glowed brighter with every word. Students gasped, teachers stepped back, the floor itself cracked beneath her feet. Her voice was calm but strong. "You called human shadow, you called us nothing, but we are memory, we are silence, and silence is never weakness." The leaders froze, their eyes wide, for in that moment every statue in the hall cracked open, stone splitting as light poured out, ancient weapons long hidden hummed to life. The mark on her hand pulsed in rhythm with them. The students screamed, some fled, some fell to their knees. The leaders shouted orders, but their voices broke against the weight in the air. The academy itself seemed to bow to her presence. When the glow faded, she lowered her hand, breathing heavy, her words falling like thunder. "You tried to erase us, but the galaxy cannot erase what it fears." From that day forward, she could no longer walk through the academy unseen. Wherever she stepped, silence followed. Whispers turned to fear, respect, and awe. Messages spread beyond the academy even faster now. Ships carried the words across stars, and in the distant halls of empires, rulers grew restless. Fleets prepared, because the memory of humanity was returning, and in her chest, she knew the truth. The galaxy was no longer laughing. The galaxy was beginning to tremble. The Academy could no longer contain the storm. Rumors had spread beyond its walls, beyond its towers, across systems and empires, the whispers of a human with the mark of fire, the mark of the silent legion. It did not take long for the Galactic Council to act. Orders came from the highest chambers. She was to be summoned, not as a student, but as a prisoner. Guards arrived at her door, tall machines of steel and bone, their eyes glowing red. They did not speak, only motion for her to follow. She rose without fear, her hand hidden in her sleeve, the tattoo pulsing softly like a heartbeat. They led her through the academy halls, past students who pressed themselves against the walls, watching in silence, some in fear, some in awe, some whispering the words that now carried weight across the stars. Silent Legion. The chamber of judgment was vast, shaped like a circle, the ceiling lost in shadow, seats carved from stone and crystal, filled with the leaders of many species, their faces grim, their eyes sharp. Above them, banners of empires stretched like threats. At the center, she stood alone, the light falling on her like a blade. One leader with horns of gold leaned forward, his voice deep. Human, you carry something forbidden, something erased from history. Speak, what are you? She raised her eyes slowly, her voice calm. I am a student. I am human. The mark pulsed under her skin, glowing faintly. Her words seemed small, yet the chamber trembled as if listening. Another leader, a creature of stone and flame, slammed his fist. The sound cracked through the hall. Lies, you carry the mark of the Legion, a weapon, a curse. We buried it for a reason. Humanity was destroyed because of it. Her jaw tightened. She stepped forward, her voice stronger. You destroyed humanity because you feared us. You called us weak, but it was fear that made you erase our name. The council erupted with voices, some shouting for her death, others warning caution, but their words died when her hand burned brighter, light spilling across the floor, symbols glowing that had been hidden for centuries. The stone of the chamber cracked, ancient patterns rising from beneath the floor, circles and runes that pulsed in rhythm with her mark. Weapons long buried under the council hall began to stir. Machines older than empires hummed awake. The air shook. The leaders froze, their faces pale. One whisper. Impossible, these were sealed before our ancestors were born, another hissed. She is the key. Her eyes widened. She looked down at her glowing hand. A key, she whispered to herself. The mark blazed brighter, and the weapons responded, their forms rising from the cracks, towering machines of war shaped like shadows of giants, silent yet alive. The council panicked. Guards rushed forward, their weapons raised, but the machines turned their heads, their eyes glowing with the same fire as her tattoo. The guards froze, unable to move. Her voice echoed without shouting, calm and heavy. You buried our memory. But memory does not die. It waits. It waits for silence to be broken. The chamber shook harder. Dust fell from the ceiling. The banners of empires tore. The leaders shouted in fear, some calling for retreat, others crying for her destruction, but none dared step closer. One leader, an elder with silver eyes, stared at her, not with anger but with sorrow, his voice soft. Child, do you understand what you carry? It is not just a mark. It is the memory of war. It will awaken more than silence. It will awaken destruction. She met his gaze, her hand burning like fire. Maybe destruction is what the galaxy needs to remember. Maybe only then will they understand humanity was never weak. The weapons around her stood tall, their glowing eyes fixed on the council. The silence that followed was heavy. Every leader could feel it, the return of a fear their ancestors had known. At last, the horned leader raised his trembling hand, his voice shaking. Take her away. Lock her down, before she awakens more. But no guard moved. The machines blocked the path, their presence like walls of fire. She stepped back slowly, the glow fading, but never leaving. She whispered to herself, It has begun. The chamber echoed with silence, the silence of leaders who had just realized their greatest mistake. When she returned to her room, her body was heavy, her hands still glowing. Faintly, she looked at the stars outside her window, her voice low. Father, the galaxy remembers. but I do not know if I can carry this alone. The tattoo pulsed once more, as if answering, as if reminding her she was never truly alone. She was part of something older, something vast, something that had waited 10,000 years. The council thought the storm could be contained, but storms never stay in cages. Within days, word spread faster than ships, faster than trade routes. It spread in whispers, in fear, in awe. The human has returned, the mark of fire has awakened, the silent legion lives. Messages reached fleets, colonies, empires. Rulers sat in shadowed halls with pale faces, remembering old stories their ancestors had tried to bury. In every corner of the galaxy the question burned: if one human carries the mark, how many more will awaken? The Academy could no longer hide her, no longer silence the truth, so they summoned her once more, not in secret, but in the grand hall, where thousands gathered. Leaders of empires, teachers, students, soldiers, scholars, even outsiders who traveled across stars to see the human child who silenced fleets with only her hand. The hall was vast. Banners of every empire hung above, lights glowing like suns, voices loud with arrogance and fear. But when she walked in, the voices fell away. Silence followed her footsteps. Her simple clothes made her look small, yet every step carried the weight of forgotten history. At the center of the hall, she stood, her head bowed, her hand hidden in her sleeve. The council leader's voice thundered, "Human, you have caused unrest, fear, rebellion. This must end today. Show us the truth, or face judgment." The crowd murmured, some shouting for her death, others whispering to see the mark, to see if the stories were real. She lifted her eyes slowly, her voice calm, but unshakable. "You mocked my people. You erased our name. But memory cannot be erased. It waits in silence." Her hand rose, the sleeve falling back, the tattoo burned brighter than ever before, lines of fire racing across her skin. The hall gasped. The banners trembled. The light of her mark spread across the floor. And then the world itself seemed to answer. The walls cracked. Ancient weapons hidden deep within the academy hummed awake. Machines of war older than empires stirred, their voices low and thunderous. The very stones of the hall glowed with human symbols, thought lost. The crowd screamed. Some fled. Others froze. Leaders shouted orders, but their voices broke against the roar of silence. Because silence now was not empty. It was heavy. It was alive. Her eyes glowed with reflected fire. Her voice rang across the hall, not loud but endless. "You called us weak, but weakness does not leave shadows this deep. You called us gone, but gone things do not make the stars tremble. You called us forgotten, but you never forgot. You buried us because you feared us." The machines stepped forward, their massive forms shaking the ground, their eyes burning like suns. They bowed to her, their heads lowering as if to a commander returned. The galaxy's most feared army had just answered to a human child. The leaders fell silent, their mouths dry, their eyes wide. One finally whispered, "The silent legion obeys her." The words spread like fire. No one denied it. No one laughed. The human girl lowered her hand slowly, the mark still glowing but softer now. She looked at the thousands before her, her voice quiet but sharper than any blade. "This is not curse, this is not trick, this is human, and from today, the galaxy will remember." Not a sound answered her, no voice, no laugh, no insult, only silence. The silence of fear, the silence of respect, the silence of memory returning. When she walked out of the hall, no guard blocked her path, no student dared mock, no leader dared command. She walked through the academy gates and looked up at the stars, her whisper carried like a promise. The galaxy falls silent now, but silence is never the end. It is the beginning. Above her, the sky burned with stars, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy remembered the truth of humanity.